Carole Murko, welcome back. It's so lovely to see you. So, Carol, I reached out to you a couple of weeks ago and
Yes.
said, would you like to have a conversation around grief? Because I'm like, I need someone to help me understand the grief I'm experiencing and walk me through and the listeners through, like, not only like how to get through grief, but both of our experiences. And I thought, who better than a student of Dr. Joe Dispenza than Carol? And of course, you've been on before, and I love talking to you. So I didn't tell you about my story.
Yeah, I want to
And
hear that.
why I wanted to press record there is you said we have to be okay with sharing our story to other people. And I'm one of these people that doesn't like I stick to my work, I get the job done. I'll share bits and pieces of my life on social media, but it's never too much. It's very superficial.
Mhm.
I'm very private. And recently I was told I should share a bit of my experience. So not my story, but my experience. So I did, and I did a video, and it was like crazy how well it was received. So many people reached out offering love, support. They had no idea. And like, of course you wouldn't. I would never let it show.
Right.
And I would never let it affect my work either. It's like my closest people knew what was happening. So then people were messaging me saying you should share more. It'll help other people heal. But also, people look at me, and this is not me just saying it, people have said it to me. They look at me like I'm so strong. I know what I'm doing. I've got like my focus on my career. I know what I'm doing all the time. And um, I'm like, even the strongest of us break at times. Um, so over the last few months, I have been, as I would say, to hell them back, and it has been absolutely horrible. And only the last few weeks, I've started to come out of it and I'm feeling a lot better. And that was really in the peak of it. I had messaged you. I'm like, I need to have someone else on to discuss this. And if it wasn't for my friends, my really close friends, and my sister and my two boys, honestly, I don't consider myself a weak person, but I don't know where I would have been. I was having some dark, dark
Mhm.
thoughts and using all the tools I knew to use, even listening to Dr. Joe's podcast, everything I could do, I was trying to do it. And thankfully, again, with the grace of God, I've gotten out the other side and I'm doing a lot better. And I'm ready to share a little bit more of what helped me heal. But I know you're going through your own as well. So we're both dealing with a lot of grief right now. And I would argue we're probably dealing with it differently as well.
Well, because grief is an expression of love, essentially, right? Why are we grieving? Because there's something that we lost that we love, right? And we, we're not a society that grieves, right? I mean, it's like we're a suck it up society. Like, you just don't show your vulnerability. And that, we've talked a lot about that before, the whole concept of the matrix and how we're all programmed. And that's one of the things we're programmed around, right? Not being connected to the process of letting go. And it could be ugly, right? It could be super ugly. It could be sometimes like, oh, everything's fine, all right, and then all of a sudden you're a puddle. um you hear a song, or a smell, right? And it just you could be in one place that just seems like I'm good, and then something triggers it, and you just feel sad, or you cry, or you just don't want connection, right? You just want to be alone. Um, so yeah, I don't know that there's no playbook for grief. Like,
Nobody teaches us it. I thought I understood grief, from the past, like losing grandparents and stuff.
Yeah.
Upon reflection, I was quite naive and also a lot younger when they passed and didn't really understand. As we get older and more in tune with ourselves, not just our emotions, I think we evolve on that. So when this season entered my life, I had no idea what was happening. I don't know. I can't even put it into words. I was so sad. I was so lost. I just felt completely heartbroken. I felt like I was stuck in a turmoil, like a tornado. And my friends kept saying to me, like, you're grieving, you're grieving. And I didn't quite understand what they said. So of course, Google knows everything. So I Googled it and I'm like, oh man, I guess I'm grieving the death of like what it was
Mm.
and trying to adjust and find myself again. And it was so hard. I, one, didn't know what to expect, but two, didn't understand what was happening until I actually delved a bit deeper. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is what's happening. And one of the hardest things ever, and I do a lot of hard things, and one of
Yeah.
the hardest things ever. And I know a lot of our listeners have experienced this because I told you when I was sharing a little bit of my, not what happened, but my experience, how I started to recover myself and find myself again. So many people messaged me and were like, I'm sorry. And then they were opening up, and it wasn't just women, it was men too. And they're sharing a bit of their story and offering me support. And it was very humbling and heartwarming. But at the same time, it was heartbreaking. So many people experiencing horrific things way worse than what I experienced. And I know that's kind of perspective and subjective, but it was a valuable lesson learned that we don't learn in school.
No, and not even as fully formed adults until we're there, right? It's I think it's one of those emotional states that is ineffable, right? And it it's different for everybody, and it depends on the degree of like the loss or whatever, that we're experiencing. And I think we're also at a time in history where there's collective grief, right? So we're also in a period where there's a lot of loss, right? Loss of well, I mean, I think about ecological grief, right? Like just how the seasons are changing, and our soul knows it, right? We know something is off, right? In the way the weather has shifted. We don't have to be, you know, believe or not believe about whatever anybody says about climate. Our hearts and souls feel it, right? So when things feel off in nature, like there's a grief around that, right? Like what's going on. And I think we've all grown up in a system that seemed to work. And then, I mean, let's face it, you're in Canada, I'm in the United States, right? It's like, you know, a year ago we were besties, like our countries, and now it's like, of course we're still besties, but
Yeah.
we've got like, this ridiculous, you know, thing going on, with our politicians and everything that is shifting what we know, right? Which also is grief, right? It's like, I mean, you would never think it would think twice about taking a ride into Canada, right? Like, and now you have to think, oh, do I have to think about this now? Is this
There'll be a
something?
problem. Yeah.
Right. So we're even at that level we're grieving, right? Because that's a loss of a freedom, right? The freedom of ease, the freedom of country friendship, um, all of those things. And we're so not only do we have personal grief, but we have collective grief.
Hmm.
And I when people ask me, how am I handling the losses and the things that are going on in my personal life, is a couple of things. One is I just practice presence. It's like radical presence because I have absolutely no control over like the outcome of what's going on, right? And in my personal stuff that I'm grieving and in the world stuff. So it's made me radically present. And
What does
so
that
I
what does that involve? Like, what do your days look like when you're trying to be present?
shutting off all the social media, right? Like really shutting out like the distractions,
The noise. Yeah.
the noise, yeah. And then really if I find my mind, this is kind of the mind work, right? Just going to a place that then makes me like scared or more sad or I pull it back to right now because this is all we have is the present moment, right? And so if I allow myself to my present moment to be snatched, then how am I ever going to heal any grief that's around me? Because then I'm just going to be constantly allowing my nervous system to be hijacked by by the unknown, right? By the noise. And and the other thing I have really leaned into is like thinking about the Chinese medicine perspective, right? The five element consciousness framework. And grief is associated with the lungs and the large intestine and this fall season, which is the letting go season.
Mm.
And the lungs are like the alchemists, right? Because like I mean, if you think about it, it's like they do two things. They breathe in, right? But then they breathe out. And so can we alchemize the grief, right? In our breath and really think about it as a passage in our life, right? And that it's just and we're not alone in it and that we even have a whole organ system associated with helping us alchemize the grief. And then if you think about what happens in the fall, at least in the northern hemisphere, we life and death. Oops.
Hold on. I think we're good. I think we're still
Okay.
recording. Yeah.
Okay. So that pattern of life and death is part of the cycle of life and that we, if we then do things to support, our whole lung and large intestine system, right? Doesn't need to be the fall, but it's just like what that asks of us are things, the color is white, so like daikon radish, uh, honey.
This is what your post was talking about the other day when you were talking about black foods.
Yeah, yeah. That supports the kidney, which is fear. So fear is the emotion of the kidney, and black foods support the kidney. And so, one of the things I'll just, I don't, I'll tell you and the listeners is my husband has prostate cancer. So part of the grief I have is for him and for me, right? Because he's going through a process where he's on drugs that have taken his testosterone levels from 900 to basically zero, right? His virility is has been erased, right? And I just it just it's a loss, right? It's a loss. But the prostate's also is connected to the kidney, right? And so I was thinking, what are things in subtle ways that I could use to support him on this journey?
Yeah.
And the color for the kidney is black, and so black foods are supportive. And so my recent newsletter was talking about I called the black sesame seeds sort of like fairy dust, right? Like that you could just sprinkle black sesame seeds just on just about everything you eat, like and simple things like that we could do to connect to that consciousness of support. And so for the lungs and that whole grieving process, we can tap into, like I make a pear daikon radish juice, right? Like, and with a little honey. That is super supportive of your lungs, and it helps, you know, all of that. So during the season, I've been making pear and daikon radish juice because at that invisible level of food nourishment, it's also tapping into helping clear out some of the grief, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. This is really interesting how different we're both dealing with grief, and I think this will help the audience a lot. You said your key word is you're trying to be present.
Yeah.
And my keyword, and I'm no doubt this is not just me, it's loads of people going through grief, was survival. I was just
Mm.
trying to survive one day at a time. I was praying to God, please just help me get through today. Then the next day, please. And it was just, I couldn't see any further. It was just, let me get through today. I was in survival, and now I've slowly shifted back into thrival. I'm trying to find my thrival again. I don't feel like I'm in that survival mode. And when I think back the last few months, it just was like a whirlwind. I'm almost like, did that really happen? In disbelief. And even during it, I was in disbelief. Is this really what's happening right now? Is this my life? Like someone pinch me and wake me up.
Yeah.
And then what I was doing that was the opposite to you, you were trying to quieten the noise. I was like, give me all the noise. Give me
Mm.
all the noise. I don't want to feel alone. I don't want to be left alone with my own thoughts because that's where I was really on the verge of breaking if you left me alone. So I was talking to my friends all the time. Of course, I have two teenage boys, so I mean, I wasn't putting the burden on them. So I was leaning on my friends and my prayers a lot. But then when they were off doing their life, I was listening to so much scripture, prophetic word, motivation, just eh, I was never in silence because if you left me in silence, my mind would spiral. The hardest part of my days, it's easing up now. It's definitely easing up now, but the hardest part of my days were first thing in the morning upon waking. I am a morning person. I go to bed at 8:30. I'm a morning
Yeah.
person, but I
Me
hated
too.
waking up.
Mm.
I had that, shortness of breath, the heartache, the anxiety, the thoughts because I was left alone in silence and I could not deal with it. And
Yeah.
even right now, I'll be completely honest with people because I know someone's going to resonate with this. For the time I have spent in grief and processing some of what happened, not alone with my girlfriends, like verbally, face to face,
Mhm.
that's where I said, okay, let's talk about what's happening. But I refused to do it by myself. And my
Yeah.
friends are like, you need to like sit down and process this and cry because I haven't cried properly since
Mm.
February. Like I haven't had a good ugly cry. And they're like, Shemaine, you're suppressing this. You need to deal with this. Honest, I said, no, I'm not going to. I don't have to. Maybe I'll be one of the lucky ones that if I just leave it for long enough, I'll just come out the other side fine. And I'll never have to deal with this because I don't
Yeah.
want to. I'm not
Yeah.
ready. I don't want to. It's already consumed enough of my life. I'm not letting it affect me any more than it already has. And maybe I'll explode one day, or maybe I will be one of the lucky ones. And in time, it'll just be so far in the past that that'll be the end of it.
Well, I'd like to reframe that you did practice presence in what you described as survival, because you were doing it day to day, which is present, and you were choosing, you were making choices in the moment of what to listen to, what could help you. It wasn't like you were listening to things that were destructive, right? They
No,
were they
no.
were for you. So it came from what you felt like a place of survival, but you were absolutely practicing presence each one single day at a time. That is presence, right? You weren't really, and then the next morning when you wake up, it was like, oh gosh, it's starting, it's a new day and I still feel empty. So I'm going to practice today again. I'm going to find the podcast or the prayers or my girlfriends, and that is presence. So I think that what felt like survival, your instincts, because you're so present in the work, and you're so aware of all the tools, that you knew what to look for, right? Um and that is presence. If you were in survival, like, you would have just been spinning, right? Like, even though you felt that way because something, disrupted your apple cart, right? And so that felt out of control. And so, and that's, but that was probably more the unknown than anything else. And and I think the work, and that the unknown never lets us down. And so you found the tools to help you navigate through. You didn't do anything destructive to yourself.
I couldn't. I couldn't. I have two boys that depend on me. I have friends that depend on me. Like they love me. They don't want anything to happen to me. I need to reciprocate that. But it was all I could do some days to stay standing was to have this podcast, the prayer, the scripture,
Mhm.
almost like pillars behind me, keeping me up. Because otherwise I was going to fall down and break. And there were days where I was like, this is consuming me. I need to get out of this. And I know I'm lucky because I have the tools. I know there's people who don't make it out,
Right.
which I'm so sorry for. But
Yeah.
it was, I'm so much better now. And the tools I had just made such a difference. Again, upon reflection, I don't wish it on anyone. It seems like I walked through a nightmare. I don't know what was happening, but it is a case of I kept saying to my friends, not to not to sidetrack, but I wanted to
You
say
love
this
your
to you
friends for being
earlier.
there for you.
I kept saying to my friends, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, and your husband, and my listeners, I was being forced, and still am being forced to do something and deal with something that I did not want to do.
Mhm.
Just like you, your husband, I didn't choose this. I don't want to do this, but I am being forced to do
Yeah.
it. And that part of that also made me angry. Like, I don't want to do this. And I have to. I have no choice. And I know what doesn't break us only makes us stronger. But that part brought out the anger in
You
me.
just froze on me. Let's
Oh,
see.
did
Yeah,
you
you
did you
froze. I
hear
didn't.
what I said there?
No, you did
Okay,
not.
so we'll go back. I was saying you got the I'm being forced to do something
Yes.
I don't want
Yeah.
to do, and that part brought out the anger in me because I'm like, I don't want to do this, but you're giving me no choice. I have no other
Yeah.
choice than to face this head on and do something I don't want to do, and because of this, my whole life is being turned upside down. And I know what doesn't break us only makes us stronger, but sometimes I would rather not be pushed to breaking
Yeah.
point. But
Yeah.
definitely, I haven't been very angry through this process, which is interesting to me. But every time I think of that, like I'm being forced to do something I don't want to do, that part makes me angry. Because
Mm.
again, what you said, control, I don't have control over this.
Right. Right. And also, anger is good, right? I mean, we have all of the emotions. If you were angry person, but you have to process that, because I don't know what happened. I'm kind of guessing in my head, and so anger is a natural emotion. So be angry, right? Like, don't hold it in. Nothing. I mean, the best thing we could do is just go through the emotion, right? Not like, don't bypass it, right? Don't try to go around it. And but and the unknown is very, it's very inconvenient. Like, because I mean, just think of anybody who's going through any kind of loss, like, whether it's divorce, or family member dying, or like a diagnosis, or a job loss, or like your house burnt. Like, we have friends, their house just burnt down over the weekend, right? Like, I mean, we asked them, can we, do you want to, we have plenty of room, do you want to stay here? And they're like, they already come for dinner, they were in such shock, right? That they couldn't even imagine like being present and eating or anything like that. And it's going to take a long time to process the loss of, I mean, these are people in their 70s, right? Their house they've lived in for 50 years or whatever, right? Um so imagine everything's gone, right? Like, and in the, and the fire started at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Like the whole day was going fine, right? And then next thing you know, like 3 hours later, your house is gone. And so, some grief, is coming, right? Like my dad had Alzheimer's, right? I think I had slow grief for 10 years, right? You just like this, you just, every time he shifted more, it was like you lost another part of him. But you knew it was coming, right? So it wasn't like after you accepted the fact that he had Alzheimer's, then the rest of it was just, you know, more loss, more loss. It was just this, but then there's shocking grief, right? Like where it's just
Out of the blue.
so, and, all I can say is that, you know, th- through TCM and Dr. Joe Dispenza, they're all about energy and quantum physics and acceptance of the circle of life and all of those, but it's not, they're not easy, right? It's not easy. And I always say, like, even doing the Dr. Joe practices and using them to heal, and um if any of it were easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So I wanted to go back to say, like, you've been doing the hard work for a very long time. And this is a good message for the audience, is that, like, something is going to wake you up to start doing the work. I mean, that's really what happens if you're open to it, right? So, and if you're going through a period of grief and loss, you could deal with it like, destructively. You could drink heavily. You could do something that's not good for you. You could, I don't know what, right? Or you can see this as a sign to evolve and look for the bigger meanings in life, because I mean, we're each individual, we're all one, we're all from, you know, the universe. And so, I think that it's an opportunity when these things happen to open ourselves up to these magnificent tools that are available to us to heal. And all I saw, like, when I'm looking at you when you're talking before, is like you built scaffolding over the last 10 or 20 years, right? In doing the work that you're doing. And, even you're like, well, I did my podcast, but that's one of your scaffoldings. Like, that's one of the pieces of your scaffolding, right? Because you built this amazing business. And so that is taking care of you, right? You've created a network of friends. They're part of your scaffolding. Your sons are part of your scaffolding, right? So I think the message too is build scout, whatever your scaffolding looks like, start building it, right?
Make it strong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it kept me standing. One of the things that came to mind when you said evolving was the idea of letting go. When people said, like, not that they were pushing me to let go, but saying, Shemaine, you have to let go. You can't keep doing this. It's going to like hold you back. And I said to someone like, but how? How do I let go? How do I do that? Like, how do I let go of something I didn't want to happen in the first place? So that was a real struggle. And for me, I leaned more, and I've always been very close to God. So I leaned more into Him and
Mhm.
my practices there and made things, I don't want to say more regular because they were already regular, but I up
Yeah.
leveled a bit.
Yeah.
Found a like really safe space in one of
Hmm.
my friends who goes to church a lot, and I committed to going to church with her every Sunday, even though I've always considered my church is everywhere. But I
Yeah.
said, I'm just going to do this because she makes me feel safe. And when she listens
Mhm.
to this, she'll know who she is. And even if it's not like my vibe in this church, because I grew up in a Catholic church as well. So this
Yeah.
church is quite different. I said, I'm
Mhm.
going to go for her because she makes me feel safe. And
Mhm.
I want to be around her right now because I feel she's helping me move
Yeah.
forward. But
Yeah.
that whole idea of having to let go when we don't necessarily want to, I found myself saying even to God, how do I let go? What can I do? What kind of tools can I use to help me let go? And people, of course, were recommending Mel Robbins' book, Let It Happen or whatever. I was like, this
Yeah.
is not helpful to me. This might be helpful to you. This book is not helpful to me. Probably because I'm more strategic. I need, like, tell me how to do this and it's gonna work. Anyway, so that was a big part in the evolving. It's, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many tools, right? Like because in Chinese medicine, it's the lungs, right? So as you might imagine, it's you know sounds, right? Like that could help you, right? So like there are like a couple of you could go hun ha, right? Because like and that like you could almost feel your lungs like releasing when you say those two words, and then you could also put a punch into it, right? Like so that helps release some of the chemicals that are in your body. um but there is not a straight path through, right? And grief will come back and bite you in the butt and sneak up on you, um and particularly ones that came as, you know, maybe a shock or something that wasn't something you chose, right? And so also in the Tao, um, one of the main principles are there are no accidents. And so if there's loss for us, then, then it's part of our life's journey. It's part of our life's path. And we can shift the lens a little bit and say, this is not against me, this is for me. And I truly believe God slash universe is way smarter than I am.
Mhm.
And so when things aren't necessarily going the way I think they should be going, and some bad, what we would define as bad things, I've really been trying to shift my lens to say maybe it's not bad. Whether it's helping me evolve, right, into a new and better version of myself, or it opens me up to a whole new, just if I were still doing X, Y, or Z, if that person was still in my life, or like even with Jim's healing journey, I just kind of look at it now. It's like we have to go to Boston every, for the next 5.5 weeks, and we're it could be like a fun little journey, right? Like where we can be going to museums that we would just never go spend 5.5 weeks in Boston.
Yeah. You're
Like
being forced to, yeah.
yeah, being forced to and have him, go through radiation, which you would never choose to do. But maybe this is just exactly what Jim needs on his
His journey. Yeah.
journey,
Yeah.
right? And I'm part of his journey. And so as a couple, we get to do something different because of this. And in that way, and for the listeners, like I was diagnosed 10 years ago with a theoretically incurable eye disease, and by now I would have was supposed to be blind according to their model. And I really didn't accept that, and the drugs were making me super sick, and I just decided that this was my journey, and my diagnosis became my greatest teacher, right? It wasn't like, oh goody, I might go blind. That was never my feeling, but it was also either I could become a victim or I can become what would be the word that I
A
want to use?
hero of your own
Yeah,
story.
of
Yeah.
my own story, exactly. And so I just decided that, and I knew there was a deeper intelligence in the body that I hadn't tapped into, that we can activate our inner healer and heal ourselves. And so I think even on this journey with Jim and everything else in life, like I'm really the lens changing has really helped me shift in how I'm navigating. And I think that's why presence became so clear to me, that like the only, and you were practicing presence, but you disguised as survival, right? Like, um, and maybe now you can change the lens on that, right? Like, and see it as okay, you know, one day at a time here. And um, like those people whose house burnt down, I mean, like, now they're in like one day at a time. And so we just, that's what we do. We put one foot in front of the other, and we find our communities, and we find our micro communities, right? Like it's like, and we get rid of people who are not in our emotional frequency, right? They're just like sorry,
They're not
there's no
helpful.
room.
Yeah, they're probably going to make things worse.
Right.
I believe with all of my heart that everything that happens is part of God's plan, and
Yeah.
humans compared to God are really stupid. We could never understand it. And I do believe that. And I always finish my prayers like, God, I trust you. But at the same time, I'm like, but by the way, this sucks. This is
Yeah.
not fun. I know this is part of my plan, but it sucks right now. And I'm
And that's
sure it's,
fair.
yeah, it's making me grow and learn and all that, but it's not fun at all. But
No.
it's like you said, when I was what I termed survival mode, it was just one day at a time, just to get through, because I knew time would heal me. I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel, because that's exactly what I say to everyone else who's grieving. Like I actually say to people, there's nothing I can say to make you feel better. There isn't. People say stuff because they want to help, but nothing's going to make it feel better. But time does heal, even though we don't see it when we're in the thick of it. But it
Yeah.
did. And now I'm not so much surviving, but I am, I suppose, like you say, I'm present one day at a time. Let me re not even rebuild, because there's a lot I don't need to rebuild. Because I had built the scaffolding. I don't need to rebuild a lot of stuff. I'm still in my home. I've still got my kids. But one day at a time, let me find my new normal. What is my life now looking like? What is my new normal? How do I make all of this work? That's where I am right now. And knowing that today being April 29th, by the time May 29th comes around, I'm going to be in a much better position and I'll feel so much better. And just, I keep trying to think of it like that to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. And that's like the Dr. Joe work too, because it's just catching yourself wishing for it to be the old way, but maybe the old way, maybe somewhere inside of you, it wasn't even the greatest, right? Like, and so you get to build a new way now, right? You become the new you, and and just, and you don't have to have a 5 year plan. It could, like you said, I love the just a month out. Like, what will that look like?
Especially with
And
summer coming, and I've so much to look forward to, like
yeah,
concerts, outdoor events. So that's
exactly.
really helping me. Whereas I have been wondering, Carol, if this happened on the other side of summer and I knew I was coming into the depths of winter, would that make things harder? How would that look, especially Canada winters? And I'm not a Canadian girl per se, so I'm not doing
Right.
all the skiing and snowboarding stuff.
Right.
So would that have made things even harder? God's timing is perfect, of course, but I have wondered, like, how would this have looked if it had happened at a different time of the year?
Well, the good news is you don't have to. I mean, the thing is that that's like thinking too much, right? Like,
And I do
um,
that.
and it's so say thank you, right?
Yeah.
And and by the way, you look amazing.
Yeah.
So you're something's going right. You look
Well, this will
fabulous.
be
So
helpful for the audience. Let me just add this in because obviously my career is in health. But when this happened, I said I knew it wasn't going to break me, but my brain had to process everything. But physically, I could still control how I was physically taking care of myself. So I did not spiral on nutrition. If anything, I honed things in even more and I took more care of myself nutrition wise. And I trained and I just all of a sudden because again that time frame is just a blur now it wasn't real time if that makes sense
Mhm.
but the last 2 3 weeks people keep stopping me like oh my god you look really good you look different did you do something different with your hair so something happened that I involved physically at the same time and maybe it is like you said this thing that happened it wasn't so great when it was around either maybe that kind of weight was lifted off me and now it's coming out in my appearance if does that make sense.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so that's where, shifting the lens to there are no accidents, right? This is the opportunity to for us to grow like when the other thing, so we one of our horses died this winter. Jim's best friend died. It was just like it was my mother's not been well. Like it's like this series of stuff, right? And I was speaking to one of my friends, and she said, God doesn't give, when we start doing this kind of work, right? This work of the soul, that be ready, right? Be ready because, you know, and I don't think it's testing. I think it's, you're ready for, to take yourself to the whole next level.
Yeah.
And so that's I think that's what happens, and some people don't go to the next level when these things happen.
I
And
think
I see them as an initiation. Sorry.
no, it was my problem. I think you were preparing for this on some level, and so
Yeah.
was Jim. And upon reflection, I was preparing for this for 10 years, and I knew I was preparing for it. And then when it happened, I was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this. I'm not prepared. And
Yeah.
then as the weeks came along to where I am now, I'm like, no, I am ready. I am prepared. I can, whatever happens, I can do this.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre how, on some level, we were preparing, and then
Yeah.
it's like, it's happening. No, no, no. Like, and then it's like, yes, it's just, as I say to some of my friends, I said to my friend the other day, I said, I think I'm spiraling. Do you know anyone who does lobotomies? And she just laughed at me.
Well, I think this is a powerful conversation because it's been, um, we've hit our different perspectives, but they're not so different, right? Like they just verbally they sounded different, but I think they're very similar because the preparation, right? The health, the eating, the 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 meditation, the prayer, all of that work is has made us, we have faith in ourselves. I think that is what we've built, is faith in ourselves and in the universe and God.
I would not to end this on a sad note, but I'm going to say it because I think it's relevant to what you said there. I do have faith and self-belief, but at the same time, I'm weak just like everyone else, and I need my systems. But there was a local woman, God rest her soul, same situation as I'm in, didn't obviously believe in herself. She took her own life, unfortunately, left two small kids. And I guess she just didn't believe that she could get through the other side, which really put things into perspective for me when I heard that. I'm like, I could never, it doesn't cross my mind that I'm not capable of certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so we're the, the lucky ones, but we're also the teachers, right? And so that's your job and my job is to reach as many people as possible with the, the messages, the tools, and 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 just to trust that if something happens, I always often think of I can't remember the name. I know the book, but I can't remember who wrote it. That man's search for meaning, and
Yes. Oh, it's on the top of my tongue. It'll come back to me now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, you think about that, and um, uh, he found meaning in the most dire of circumstances, and it kept him alive, right? And so it's our inner strength that all of this work builds.
Mhm.
And I would just encourage anybody to, a lot of, and this is kind of interesting because I think a lot of people get into this work because of a crisis, right? Or a tragedy or something. And it's like, I really just want to tell everybody, like, do it now. Like, don't wait for like something not great to happen, because there are teachers and tools and amazing communities that are there for all of us to support us, like at every stage of our journey. But if you're in a good place, like, start playing around with the
Start
tools, start
preparing.
meditating.
Yes. Like we
Yeah,
start preparing now.
right.
I agree. I agree. We should always be prepared. And that was Viktor Frankl. Who
That's right. Thank you.
just we'll wrap up now, but what you said there, we do what we do because we want to be part of that scaffolding to help
Yeah,
others in
yeah,
their times of need.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, Carol, thank you for the conversation. I didn't even have a plan. I just was like, let's just have a casual conversation and see where it goes. And it went somewhere nice, I think, somewhere sweet. One thing, actually, I will add, because I said this to my group the other day, is in this journey, I've started to rediscover a part of myself that had been not lost, she had been suppressed.
Mm,
And now my more sweet side, that young girl that was sweeter, is starting to come out again and be like, no, this is who I am. I've had to suppress that side of me for so long. I had to be strong. I had to be fierce. I had to have my guard up. And she got lost. But now I said, I think it's kind of sweet. She's coming out again. I'm starting to see parts of myself that I'd forgotten about.
beautiful. Yeah, and see what a gift that is.
Well, thank you, Carol. Lovely to
Thank
see you as
you. Thank you.
always. I'll keep yourself, your husband, your mom, everyone in my prayers.
And I keep you and everybody that is impacted by what happened in my prayers. Thank you.
Take care.